register 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds realizing that we may have an explosion in voting among that age group like we've never seen before. Well,
that's the interesting thing too, that we've had this conversation, is that while you see large numbers of people who are pro gun control, let's call it, the depth of those feelings are not as intense, or as deep, I should say, or the intensity of those stances are not as intense as people who are rabidly pro Second Amendment, and as evidenced by when you ask people, what issue is likely to be in your top 2 reasons for voting or for voting against somebody. You'll see people who are, against gun control voting on that far more than you see people. And that's been the issue. But if that cohort of 18 to 24-year-olds, if this becomes an issue for them that drives them to the poll,
defining issue, right? And this is about their lives, so it is a defining issue. I mean, it's schools that have become a favorite target, sadly, and so they're just sort of saying, adults, you won't protect us or do anything. We're going to do it. And I could see all sorts of kids, if it becomes, this, like, again, I got to stop saying kids, but if you see this, it becomes the culturally cool thing to do.
Right.
You go in and you vote against the Republicans and the NRA, and the Republicans, of course, who support the NRA, because at this point it's almost interchangeable with just a few exceptions. You have your Heidi Heitkamp, who's terrible on guns, the only senator left who voted against background checks, after Newtown, the only Democratic senator. And then you have a couple here that voted for some stuff, Susan Collins and Pat Toomey. But for the most part, your Venn diagram is almost one circle over the other,
right,
of the NRA and the GOP at this point in time. And so it's not really hard to figure out who's for gun control and who isn't. And really, party label pretty easily tells you.
What's going to be interesting is to see if there are groups out there, because you have a lot of groups in this era, right? These that have come up. Some you want to call them resistance, #resistance groups, or just people who have come up in the wake of 2016, whether it's like Indivisible or Swing Left or even the DSA, which these are things that have grown significantly over the past year or two. I'm waiting to see if like the DSA or one of these groups like realizes like, hey, we could be sponsors for this movement, make it about this, and this is a way to introduce people to our politics. This is an issue that could be leveraged.
It would be a smart thing to do.
It'd be a smart thing to do for, for the Democratic Party, who knows?
Because look, I can be objective and honest about this, especially as somebody who did work. I never worked for, which I think you said, but that's okay. I consulted for, both Everytown. I consulted for Brady. But the thing is, to our chagrin on some other issues, Michael Bloomberg is an independent. He's not a Democrat, right? And there's certain places to kind of, because he has a very moderate image, he's not willing to go.
Right.
And some of these groups, like Indivisible and others, if they're willing to take up this banner, because this is what was always needed. That's part of the whole toxify the NRA. Make the names of who these guys are famous, who run these gun companies, but also just sort of engaging in the kinds of tactics and strategy that make some people that are centrists, quote unquote, uncomfortable. That you need to go out there, you need to say some of these things like they are. You need to say, this is a bunch of arms dealers who make money off of kids and police and other people dying. That's just a fact. All right, so Go ahead.
I have to say that, I want to say that I'm sort of bewildered by, but I'm not bewildered by. But I just feel like one could learn a very interesting lesson when you have a guy who is a billionaire, who has the ability to spend unlimited amount of funds, who approaches business like, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to find the most effective way to do this, and I'm going to do it. And there is a lesson about ideology and about money to be gleaned from someone who's willing to spend that much money but not engage in what is clearly the most effective tactic. Like, if I have to spend an extra $20 million to avoid doing this the way that is going to be most effective and get it done, I will do that. In fact, I will light all that money on fire at the end of this and not go to that place that makes me uncomfortable, because I don't want to demonize the corporations in any fashion whatsoever. That, to me,
right, or the individual players in this, or certain Republicans who support other things I support because I've got other issues. And and Gabby Giffords was always was a blue dog and a more moderate Democrat. And I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just simply saying they were never, they're not comfortable doing the kinds of things. I mean, I drive I'm on the board of Planned Parenthood, and I drive there, and I got to see these people out there holding these pictures of fetuses and all this stuff. Who essentially, it's not a big deal for me. They harass women trying to go in there.
Right.
And we've decided that that's illegal. It really shouldn't be, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's harassment, and I think if they can hold signs somewhere else. I don't think they should be allowed anywhere near the place women have to go to get treatment. But okay, we said that's legal. Why are we not outside, on the public property, just far enough away from Mitch McConnell's house with pictures of dead kids? Because a bunch of parents have said they want those pictures out there.
Or the CEO of formerly Smith and Wesson.
CEO, yeah. Why are we not following them around? Why are we not using those kinds of tactics at the anti-choice movement with child-sized caskets? Why are we not showing up at their meetings, showing up and walking around and following Marco Rubio everywhere he goes, showing up outside their offices? Well, I think you're seeing some of that now, and I think you're going to see a lot more of it. And that's what was always needed on this. It's not to say that Bloomberg and Giffords, their money and their voice wasn't valuable. They're very valuable because there's no one out there before who was doing anything. And they helped get a bunch of things done. They helped fund referenda, in Washington State and Nevada and places that passed universal background checks. I'm not saying they didn't do anything, but for a while now it's been quite obvious that a left, more aggressive flank that's not worried that what they think of us, or that we're going to see them at a party and they're going to disagree with us on something else, on some other issue, that we just don't give a damn. This is what we're going to do, and you're going to do. We're going to use every legal measure that we can to annoy you and make your life difficult, or you're going to represent democracy, and so all of this has been huge. The poll numbers changing, and as you know, culture always changes before politics. We saw it with gay rights. We've seen it more recently with first medicinal, then recreational marijuana, and now I think finally we're seeing with guns. And and look, I do have to say the one thing that bothers me about this, but it shouldn't take away from how important this all is that obviously I would be, remiss if I didn't point out that this was a very wealthy white area when this happened, and America cares more of that. Okay, and that's just, I wish that were not the case. I wish that we were there as much. Obviously, when this is the kind of maybe not the mass shootings, but these shootings that happen every day in poorer and less white neighborhoods, and we've just sort of but there's no doubt we'd be dishonest if we didn't admit that that's a factor here.
Right.
But the fact that to me right now, whatever it takes to get this moving forward, I just think it's something where you can't. I mean, Parkland. The average house costs something like $900,000. Wow. So you can move to a suburb that you think is safe. You can move to a place where you think you've got the money, and you still can't protect your kids from the NRA. That's just a fact. I mean, sadly, this is the first time I've known a bunch of survivors from Virginia Tech, family of someone who was murdered in Aurora, in the movie theater and that kind of thing. But this is the first time this ever happened to me, which is, a friend of mine who's on, who I know is on a board with me here in Cincinnati. Her niece was one of the kids one of the girls young ladies who was shot and killed in that school in Florida. So I actually know somebody now who has lost personally, who I didn't meet after, but I've known for a while before, and I've seen it. And it shouldn't have to be that way. But I think that some of it's that a lot more people that have been okay to ignore this are going to know people and are going to realize that, yes, it actually can happen to them, that we're doing nothing to stop this, and there's just no reason why one disgruntled or mentally ill or criminally inclined kid who's at a school somewhere can't go to a flea market that weekend and buy military-powered weaponry without a background check and then take it to school the next week. Everyone's vulnerable to it. All of us are. And I think that, you know, again, I'm not saying that that's the way it should be. It should have changed when it was affecting any of us. But, you know, it is what it is. And now that I think certain people who never felt vulnerable this way are going to, it's going to change things too.
Well, let's hope.